All right. Hey everyone, if you're curious about how to become a meteorologist, then please stay tuned for this episode. Hi, I'm Kiki.
And I'm Kemi.
And you're listening to
Your Advisors Will See You Now, a podcast that will help you to figure out all of your options for life after high school.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Your Advisors Will See You Now. It's Kiki here today. Kemi couldn't be here to record. I'm going to miss her a lot, but we are joined by a really special guest today. I was just sitting one day and I was like, we haven't interviewed a meteorologist before. So our friend of the podcast, Janae, came through, and her friend Iisha is here today with us. And she's a meteorologist. She's going to talk about her career. I think it's going to be really interesting because I've always been curious about this career. So let me introduce Iisha. I'll read her bio, and then we'll get started. So Iisha Scott is an award-winning certified broadcast meteorologist at NBC Chicago. Her career has taken her from the Southeast to the Mid-Atlantic and now the Midwest, covering everything from hurricanes and tornadoes to blizzards. Iisha is a proud Norfolk State University graduate, where she earned her Bachelor of Science degree in Mass Communications. She also holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Geosciences and Broadcast Meteorology from Mississippi State University. Iisha is a member of several organizations, including Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, National Association of Black Journalists, National Weather Association, and the American Meteorological Society. Aisha's busy, y'all, and we love it. So Iisha, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it.
I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to talk to you too, because I wish I had something like this when I was coming up and really thinking about what I wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really why Kemi and I started this. We've been doing it about 2 years now. And that was the thing. We both were like, we didn't have any resource like this, even though we had, great education. I think we all, had great education and people probably ahead of us. But it was like, I didn't really get the in-depth guidance that I needed about careers or how to pick a career. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we all everyone that comes on here is like, I wish I had this too. And we're like, yeah, we wish we had it as well. So it's great. And sorry, y'all, if I didn't mention, this is one of our career series, as you probably already noticed. So we're just going to have Iisha give us a really good snapshot of what her career entails, how she started her career. So Iisha, I'll let you get started. If you could just give us a little bit of information about your background, or actually let's start with, if you just say what your title is, what you do in your day-to-day. We'll start with that.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, my name's Iisha Scott. I am a broadcast meteorologist. So I'm a meteorologist who works on television. I work at NBC Chicago. I actually have been here about 2 years, a little over 2 years. So just recently moved to Chicago not too long ago. And really when it comes to the day-to-day with the meteorologist, I forecast the weather. I predict the weather. And then I have to go on TV to let people know what is going to happen with the weather, not only for that day, but also here we do 10 days out. So we normally look 10 days out. Most stations, at least that I've worked at, I did a 7-day forecast, but we do 10 days. So we look ahead to see what we're thinking as far as the weather goes.
Okay. And I know I have a lot of questions. I always wonder, because we see it and it looks really easy, but I know y'all put a lot of work into your craft. Excuse me. So I'll ask for more in depth too, because I'm sure people are curious, how you even predict the weather, how that all works. Right. That's awesome though. How do you? So can you talk about how you got started? How did you become familiar? And I'm sure you watch TV and you figured it out, but what made you want to get started with a meteorologist's career?
So I've actually wanted to be a meteorologist since I was 7 years old.
Wow. Okay.
7 years old. And, it's funny because talking to my mom, she says that she thinks the weather bug bit me at 2, 3 years old. And I asked her, what do you mean by that? And she said, I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. We don't get snow a lot in southeastern Virginia.
Right.
And we had a really big snowstorm. And she said, I took you outside. It was me, her, and my grandfather. And she said the snowflake fell in your hand and you closed your hand and then you opened your hand back up. And you looked around where did it go? What happened to it?
That's so cute. Oh my goodness.
She said, you looked at me, you looked at, I called my grandfather Dad. She said, you looked
Mm-hmm.
at him and you were just wondering, like, where did this snowflake go? And she said, for her, that's when it started. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, as far as I can remember, I was 7 years old. And I grew up watching the Weather Channel. So
Okay.
most young folks, young people, Saturday morning, kids, I'll say, Saturday morning, we'll watch cartoons and things of
Right.
that nature. That was not me. Okay. I was not watching cartoons on Saturday morning. I was watching the Weather Channel, like the Weather
Love
Channel.
that. I love it.
And yeah, and I grew up just very curious. I've always been curious, still very curious. I have a lot of questions about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up in Virginia, we got a little bit of everything as far as weather is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Hurricanes in the summer, you're talking thunderstorms, severe thunderstorms,
Right.
tornadoes. I mean, just some of everything. And I just always wondered, how does this stuff form?
Mm-hmm.
How is lightning created? Thunder, where does that come from? Hurricanes, where do hurricanes come from? So for me, I feel like those questions kind of to led me to meteorology, but I think it even opened up a bigger
Mm-hmm.
idea of, what if I could just do this for a living? Like, is this even
Right.
a thing? A person who studies the weather and answers some of these questions. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I did. And I'll never forget, I think it was middle or high school. I actually had one of our local meteorologists come and talk to our class. And for me, that was
Wow.
it. I was
Okay.
like, oh, this sounds interesting. This sounds like something I could do.
I love that. That's like really an amazing story because it just was piqued by your curiosity like at a very young age, which that's just very cool that you were watching the Weather Channel too at 7 years old. Um, but that story about your mom, that's really sweet too. That she probably already knew. Moms always know.
Right? Always know.
Yes, they do. That's super cool. I love that. So you said you kind of already, well, you definitely had an idea like that you wanted to be a meteorologist as your career. So like in high school, besides, having someone come to your class, but like in high school,
Yeah,
like what things were you doing to like prepare yourself for college? And I guess I asked that too because I see you have two bachelor's degrees.
I do.
So like how were you doing your research or like how did you come to the decision to like get two bachelor's degrees or is it not really easy to study that in college, like most
Yes.
colleges?
And so my path was it was a little unique. And I say
Okay.
that because I've wanted to be a meteorologist ever since I was 7.
Mhm.
Um, and that was at that point I could put like the title to it. Like I didn't know what it was until that point.
Okay.
And so when I went to like middle school and high school and I was able to shadow and had meteorologists come to my school and talk, that's when I really started thinking like, okay, well, what do I need to do to go into this field? And so in high school, I took as many science classes as I could.
Mhm.
I remember earth science. Oh my gosh, being like my favorite class ever. Earth science was my class. Um, and so my guidance counselor in high school, I remember her mentioning to me that if weather is what you want to do, meteorology in particular is what you want to do,
Mhm.
start looking at more of those science and math classes.
Mhm.
But honestly, I was really good in science, but I was not good in math.
Okay.
And a lot of people probably do not realize how much math goes into meteorology. I mean, it's a lot of math. So I told myself, okay, I'm not that great in math. I love science. I'm really good in science. I knew
Mhm.
I wanted to go into the broadcasting field too. So my thinking was I could tie the two industries together and get two separate
Mhm.
degrees. Now, looking back, was that the best idea? No, because these student loans, okay.
Yes. I feel you.
So looking back, I probably would not have done it that way. But what I did, and also, I mean, I'm just being honest, I did not want
Mhm.
to leave home.
Mhm.
I
Okay.
was like not one of those people who wanted to go across the country to college. I really did not want to leave home. So I went
Mm-hmm.
to Norfolk State University, and there I got all of my TV experience. But you know what? I say I probably wouldn't do it that way looking back. And I only say that because it's so expensive
Yeah.
getting like one bachelor's degree and then another bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
However, my experience, oh my gosh, I would not trade it for the world.
Yeah, I love that.
I went to Norfolk State, and I mean, just outside of the educational part, Norfolk State was just amazing. A whole nother story. But I went to Norfolk State and I got my bachelor's degree in communications, and there I learned TV. I
Mm-hmm.
learned how to write. I learned how to put packages together. I learned, TV law. I mean, that's where I learned about TV. And then after that, I went to Mississippi State and I got another bachelor's degree. Now, I could have gotten my master's degree. I'm a little impatient. And
Okay.
so I knew that I would have to take more classes and all of that. So I basically would have had to sit out a year because I would have needed more classes
Okay, sure.
to basically be a prerequisite for some of the master degree level classes
Mm-hmm.
at
Okay.
Mississippi State.
Makes
And I didn't want to do that. So I was like, you know
mm-hmm.
what? I'll go back and I'll get another bachelor's degree. And that's what I ended up doing. So I actually went to Mississippi State. I moved there for a year and a half. And then while I was there, I found out that they actually had a really great online program.
Okay.
So I moved back to Virginia and finished my degree online while working at my first TV station in Richmond, Virginia.
So cool. So, when you went back to work you said in Richmond,
Yeah.
was that like in a role as a meteorologist, or were you just starting out like as a reporter? Like, do you have to kind of start out as a reporter first and then you
Yeah.
get into meteorology, or how does that process work? Pathway work, I
Yeah,
should
so
say.
I didn't, when I went to Richmond, I didn't work as a meteorologist because I was still
Mhm.
getting my degree.
Right.
So I was working behind the scenes in production.
Okay.
And I'm the type of person, if it's something I really want, I'm going to use everything to my advantage, right? Like
Sure,
all of the
absolutely.
resources that are around me, I'm going to use these
Mhm.
resources to get me closer to where it is that I'm trying to go. So when I worked
Mhm.
in Richmond, I worked at NBC 12, and there I was working in production, and they needed someone to fill in on traffic.
Mm.
And I was so nervous.
Mhm.
I had never been in front of the camera, but I agreed to do it because my thinking was, okay, well, if I fill in on traffic, I'm working on the green screen, and this is
Mhm.
what we
Yeah.
do as meteorologists, so maybe I
Right.
should just do it, and I would become a little bit more comfortable. And I
Mhm.
started filling in on traffic, and that was some of the best experience
Hmm.
that I think I could have gotten, just getting my foot in the door behind the scenes and then being
Right.
able to work in front of the camera.
That's awesome. And we've interviewed Janae. We've interviewed our
Uh,
other friend Eugene too. So a few of you in
okay.
the communications, like broadcast journalism field. And it sounds like it's just like nitty gritty. Like you have to just go out on
Yes.
a limb and just do things like that. If you want to get into such and such area, like maybe you're starting in production and then you're like learning from somebody else. Is that kind of what you think? Like it's just do whatever you can to get where you need to be. And you kind of already mentioned that.
That is exactly it, because I filled in on traffic and then on weekends. So I worked weekends after my shift. I was practicing on the
Wow.
green screen and I
Okay.
was practicing weather, and it's so funny because the meteorologist at the time who was helping me, with weather, we now work together in Chicago. So,
Oh, cool.
so
That's
life
awesome.
just comes full circle. So
Mhm.
after my shift, I was practicing weather, and it's a whole thing. It's not as easy as it looks
Right.
at
I'm
all.
sure.
Yes, and so just practicing getting comfortable, and as scientists, we sometimes have these really big words in our head, and how can we
Mhm.
make the audience understand it? So
Right.
it's a whole thing, and so I did that, and I worked in Richmond for, gosh, a little over a year. And then the news director in Richmond helped me get my first weather job in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you met Janae, I'm sure, because I know that was
Uh-huh.
Janae's like first stop out of college.
Yeah.
I love that. So I'm trying to think how I want to order these questions, but you've already kind of mentioned like what the day today looks like. So, and I know like and you just mentioned like you're a scientist, and I'm sure I didn't really think about that, but like this is a science career for sure. But and I'm sure most of us, like I mentioned before, like we watch the weather, like we go to our weather apps or we're watching the weather on TV, and it looks really easy, but
Mhm.
I just know like there's a lot of prep that goes into it. So can you kind of take us through like and kind of like in depth like how you predict the weather and how you like read the maps like for us that don't really understand,
Yeah.
but yeah, like you said, you kind of have to make it like bring it down for your audience, but like what is your day like starting out looking like and like to the point that you're on TV sharing the weather and things like that.
Yeah, so when I come in, I always take a look at what happened the day before. So
Mm-hmm.
I look at the temperature from the day before. Just for instance, here in Chicago, we had sunshine yesterday. We were in the 40s yesterday. Why did we have sunshine yesterday? Why? And that goes back to my curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
why were
Yeah.
we in the 40s yesterday? Because in my opinion, I really think it's important to not just give the weather, but also explain why things are happening. In
Mm-hmm.
Chicago, it has been so mild. We are running behind on snowfall for winter.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this happening?
Right,
Because
right.
it should not be. So usually I come in and look at the day before, and then I look to see if anything has changed from the day prior. And when I say anything, I mean, do we have more clouds today?
Mm-hmm.
Have the wind shifted? Because when the winds shift, that could change our weather too. So we get a wind out of the north, it's usually cooler. So what has changed from yesterday? And then going forward, what storm systems are going to be impacting us? So is there a storm system coming, say, on the end of the year or, in the next couple of days? Is there a storm system that could be impacting us, bringing us rain or snow? What
Mm-hmm.
does the next couple of days look like? And the way we do that we actually forecast the weather, we use computer models, and we use several computer models.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, gosh, just off the top of my head, there are maybe about five computer models that I use on a daily basis.
Wow.
And what we do is we look for consistency in these models. And the more consistent the models are, the more confident we are in our own forecast. But
Mm-hmm.
the challenge comes where if these models are not consistent, right? And when I say models, for instance, we have the European model, we have um, the American models. We have all these different models that are basically looking at the atmosphere and telling us what they think is going to happen. But
Okay.
when we get models that are not agreeing, that's where, we come in as the scientists and we're like, okay, what
Mm-hmm.
do we think is going to happen? Do we think whatever these models are saying, do we actually think that's what's going to happen based
Mm-hmm.
on the environment at the time? So it's a lot of science.
Mm-hmm.
We use a lot of computers and technology too to help us along the way. Then usually I put together the next 7 days, the next 7 or 10 days, and then I get ready and go on air. We do our own graphic, so no one's helping
Oh.
us.
Really? I did
Yeah.
not know that. Okay, wow. So like so you're saying like when they have like the 7 or 10-day forecast, like those images like with the sun or like like the temperature, you do all of that?
We do all of that. So every
Oh,
single
wow.
graphic that you see in a weather forecast on TV, more than likely, more times than not, the
Mhm.
meteorologists put those graphics together. Now, some stations
Wow.
have weather producers
Mhm.
that
Okay.
will help make graphics, but the majority of the stations, at least that I've worked at, we've always done that ourselves.
Oh, I would have had no idea. I don't know. I
Yeah.
always just pictured like that's a graphic designer's job or like some kind of like
Oh,
yeah,
no.
production person's job, but well like you said it could be that someone's doing that, but that's amazing.
Yeah.
So your prep time is probably several hours in?
It's several hours. I try to get in at least 2 hours before my show.
Okay.
And then, not to mention, because I work in television, I
Mhm.
mean, you got to have your hair and makeup
Yes.
together. So that's
Yes.
a whole, another 30 minutes that you're factoring into your time before you actually go on air. So you're doing hair, makeup, and, just trying to make sure that you look presentable too, in
Mm-hmm.
addition to forecasting, putting graphics together. And then you're kind of a producer as well. So it's like, how do I want to
Wow.
tell this weather story?
Yeah.
Because that's important too. Like, what story am I telling? And
Mm-hmm.
how am I going to tell it in a way that people understand?
Yes. Okay. I love it. Like I had no idea. So now I'm really curious about like the graphics thing. Would you say that
Yeah.
your communications degree prepared you for that, or like did they teach you all that in your second bachelor's when you were like getting your meteorology degree, or was that just kind
Mhm.
of you taught yourself? Like how did that work? Because that's a lot of work.
That is a lot. I think
Yeah.
it comes from, I would say, I think the majority of it came from me working, like my
Mhm.
first
Okay.
job, and
Mhm.
also internships and shadowing.
Okay.
I think the majority of it, I feel like, came from when I got my first job, because I feel like we can learn a lot in school, right? Like,
Mhm.
I mean, you learn a lot in school, but until you get in that field,
Right.
you're really like hands on doing the job. That's when you
Mhm.
learn the majority of what it is that you're doing or trying to do.
Right, absolutely. And that's a big thing. Something that Kimmy and I are very big on is just like interning or shadowing. So I'm just curious, like for yourself, how did you go about making those connections or doing that outreach to, 'cause I'm assuming, so was your shadowing, was that in high school or this was in college?
It was in high school.
Okay. How'd you
Yeah,
go?
it was in
So
high
yeah,
school.
how'd you go about making those connections like at a young age like that?
I send cold emails. Like,
Okay, I love it.
I am a fan of just sending a random email.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I want to do. I would love to be able to come in to just shadow you one day so that I get a better understanding of this job and what it entails. I'm a huge fan of it. I know it can be really intimidating, but I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it has gotten me so far just
Mm-hmm.
reaching out. Whereas now you don't even have to send emails. I mean, you could go on LinkedIn, you can go on social media, but
Exactly.
right, just reaching out, because you never know. There are so many
Right.
people out here willing to help, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you don't say anything.
Right, right. Just the art of the cold outreach.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does work for sure. But yeah, again, like because I think even back to myself, and I always kind of harp on or say this, like I wanted to be a physical therapist, but
Yeah.
never walked inside a physical therapy office. Like I just grew up an athlete, and so I was like, oh, this sounds
Mhm.
cool. And looking back, I was like, I worked with a lot of athletic trainers. That's different. And
Oh,
that was
yeah.
just because they were like working on me. But it just like harps on the importance, like your experience. You were just like, let me go out here and email people, go
Yeah.
like get in their face, and that is like just super important. And emails are okay, everybody. Like you can like Aisha said, you can email. Like you don't have to like go like back in our parents' day, they didn't have that. They had to like actually go inside of a place. And
Right.
I know that's nerve wracking, but an email, you have Chat GPT, you have people that can help you write
Mhm.
emails if you don't want to write it. Like you said, you can, reach out through social media or LinkedIn. So it
Yeah.
really is so important because honestly, like how do you know what you want to do or if you like it if you don't see it in action? So
Exactly.
good, like thank you for harping on that. And because it just really is so vital to figure out what you want to do.
I think it's
Um
important too that if it is something, like you said, if there is something that you want to do, a career
mm-hmm,
field that you want to go into, reach out, because you just
mm-hmm,
never know. Like, I'm talking to you about weather, and if a meteorology, and if we weren't having this conversation, you would have had no idea like
mm-hmm. Yeah,
what goes into
absolutely.
it. And it's the same way. My first job
Mm-hmm.
working behind the scenes, I had no idea what
Mm.
all went into it until that first job.
Right. And that's probably most people too, because yeah, I can imagine that's most people. Like people, I used to work at a community college and I had so many students, they're like, I want to be a nurse. And I'm like, okay. And like thankfully the program like made or it was required you to be a CNA first, because that
Okay.
really is like how you get your foot in the door. Like if you
Yeah.
don't want to be a CNA, you probably don't want to be a nurse. Or if you like went through your CNA class and it was like you just did not like bodily fluids, like you don't want to be a nurse.
Right.
So it really just does give, like literally tells you if you're gonna like this career or not. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep harping on it, and Kemi and I will keep harping on it. Aisha's harping on it. Like you have to get your feet wet, and
Do.
it's so important. Like your parents, whoever's listening, your parents have connections, or if you're already a professional, there's so many people you can reach out to. LinkedIn, social media has really changed the game. And
Mhm.
like you said, people, I find people really are willing to speak with people and, give them 15 minutes of their time just to say like,
Yeah.
this is what I do. How can I help you? People are very generous with that these
Mhm.
days. So it's possible, everyone, and you can
It
do
sure
it.
is.
You can do it. So you kind of already talked about some of the skills, but can you like kind of summarize like what skill set you think is important to enter into this career field?
Yes. Gosh, skills. I would say persistence,
Mhm.
hard work. I mean, you've got to be a hard worker. Stay
Mhm.
curious too.
Mhm.
That curiosity, can really take you far. Attention to detail.
Mhm. I'm sure.
And
Oh, I
being
believe
one
it.
of those people who, I am a triple checker. Like, I don't check things once or twice. I go over things
Right.
3 times. And also, I would also say not taking yourself too seriously. So being a little lighthearted,
Mhm.
because as a broadcast meteorologist, and I've, dealt with this especially early on, but just trying to, if you take yourself too seriously, I feel like it could hurt you more than help you, especially being on
Mhm.
camera.
Right.
And, just have fun. Have fun with it. I know that's maybe not a skill,
Mhm.
but really have fun
Oh,
with
that's good.
it because it translates. And, people can see when you're having fun or when you're not, when
Mhm.
you're nervous, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
If you don't have to love the math and science, but for sure
Mhm.
be willing to push through and to learn. And that's why I mentioned persistence, because these math and science classes, are not easy, especially the math. I mean, it's just not easy. So you got to be willing to push through, some of these classes, and even, not even just pushing through with school, but also with jobs, because you don't
Mhm. Yeah,
always get
absolutely.
the job that you want, especially starting out. So, can you look at this job as an opportunity or a resource to get you where it is that you want to be, as opposed to just what it is that you want to do right out the gate? Because sometimes it
Mhm.
just doesn't always work that way.
Right. Absolutely. Next question, curious about. So, what would you say are some of your highlights of your profession, and what are some of the challenges that you've experienced?
Yeah, I think, oh gosh, I'm thinking about some highlights. Well, the one that's most recent that comes to mind is last year I was on the Today Show with Al Roker. Uh,
Wow.
so the Today Show covered the Chicago Marathon,
Okay.
and I did the Today Show weather hits with him, and it was so much fun.
That's
And
iconic. Wow.
I And I feel like that goes back to the have fun piece, because I got to
Mhm.
see just how fun, like, Al Roker is,
Mhm.
like, he does not
Sure.
take himself seriously at all. Um,
Yes.
so I think that was certainly a big highlight for me. I would say one of the challenges, you don't see a lot of Black female meteorologists.
Mhm.
So I feel like, especially early on, I dealt with just trying to figure out where I fit
Mhm.
in this
Mhm.
whole thing, because this is something I've always wanted to do, but I didn't really see many women doing it who looked like
Mhm.
me. So
Yeah.
I feel like early on I really dealt with a lot of, doubt and just trying to figure out where I fit in all of this.
Right.
Um, and another challenge, and I know I keep bringing this up, but the education. Meteorology is a
Mhm.
tough degree to get.
Mhm.
Just to
Yeah.
give you an example, so I had to take Calculus 1, Calculus 2, Calculus 3,
Mm.
differential equations. I had to take Physics 1, Physics 2. Basically, I was in classes with engineers.
I was gonna say I was gonna say that's an engineering curriculum for sure. I was about to say the same thing. Wow.
Yes, I was in several classes with engineer majors.
Mhm.
It's a really tough degree to get. It's
Yeah.
not easy. But if you, like I said, if you can push through and you have that drive, you have that determination, the
Mhm.
persistence, you can do it for sure.
Right. Wow. Yeah. I'm learning so much. I am learning so much because as you were like listening to classes off, because Kemi and I both used to be academic advisors, and as you were listening to those classes, I was like, sounds like an engineering
Mm-hmm.
pathway.
Yep.
But it definitely makes sense. So Yeah, definitely like this is a STEM field. So definitely it
It
makes
is,
sense that
yeah.
you be with the engineers. What was I gonna ask too? So I feel like the answer is no, but I'll let you answer it. So it sounds like there's really like this is a very straight path. Like you have to have the education in meteorology or have some kind of science background to get into the field. Like it sounds like you can't, there's not really like many ways to get in. Sounds pretty straight.
I think yes and no.
Okay.
I say that because I do know, and I have meteorology colleagues
Mm-hmm.
who, for instance, one of my really good friends, he started off as a reporter,
Okay.
and then I mentioned Mississippi State has an online program. And so
Mm-hmm.
he started off as a reporter, and then he went to Mississippi State and got his education in meteorology. And he's a meteorologist, and he works in New
Okay.
York. So you can go different routes. And I know colleagues who have gone different routes, but you
Mm-hmm. Okay.
still need the science background.
Right.
Because the thing is, you need to know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Gone are
absolutely.
the days of just reading numbers, on a TV
Yes.
screen and going home. Like, especially because the weather is just tornadoes and hurricane. You got to
Mm-hmm.
know what you're talking about. And
Absolutely.
knowing what you're talking about, it builds trust with viewers, it builds trust with the
Mm-hmm.
community. And that's what you want.
Definitely. Absolutely. And that's, I mean, I think that was, you said like yes and no. So like, you can kind of pivot from
Yeah,
like a general broadcast career into this, but education sounds like that you have to have the education background because you, like you said, you
for
want to know what you're
sure.
talking about, and you want the viewers to trust you too. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
My, I'm sorry,
Oh no, it's okay.
um, but I feel like I have like one fun question, but my like last regular question
Mhm.
is what advice would you have for someone that wants to become a meteorologist or is curious about it? What's your advice to that listener?
So if someone wants to become a meteorologist, I would figure out what field they want to go into.
Hmm.
Because I went into the broadcast field, which is TV. I went into TV specifically, but also radio. But keep in mind, I mean, they need meteorologists at so many other fields, whether it's the government or aviation.
Hmm.
They look for meteorologists too. So think about what field you want to go into. If you specifically want to go into TV, get ready to start off in a smaller market, a smaller city. So it
Right.
may be somewhere that's far away from home.
Hmm.
You got to have a little bit of courage, you
Definitely.
know. So be ready to take the opportunity that's going to at least get you in the door so that you can start working towards what it is that you really want. And that
Hmm.
may be as a meteorologist. I just didn't start off that way, but you for sure can start, as a meteorologist in, say, a smaller market versus working behind the scenes in production like I did.
Hmm. No, that's great advice. Just to say that, you don't have to just be on TV. That for
Yeah.
mentioning, thank you for mentioning like there's other areas you could do aviation or the
Mhm.
government, because maybe someone doesn't want to be in front of a camera, and that's okay. So that's a great point just to say that there's multiple fields that need meteorologists out there.
Yeah.
Okay, my last question. I don't know I'm not even sure if this is what meteorologists do. Are you all the ones that like if there's like bad weather, do you have to go out in like tornado like the hurricanes and stuff like that? Or are those like the general like the field
Yeah.
reporters?
What? Okay, so it's funny because kind of both. I've
Okay.
seen several times networks or stations send reporters, like general reporters, out to cover weather
Mhm.
stories. But also, meteorologists will sometimes go out and cover weather stories too. I have seen at some stations that I worked at previously, they wanted to keep the meteorologists in the station,
Right.
so that they can, because they know the science. So kind of both. So it could be
Okay.
either or.
Okay.
But oh man, I've covered and have been out in the field. Um, I'm just thinking Hurricane Arthur. Well, that's when I worked in Wilmington, and
Okay.
Hurricane Arthur passed 25 miles off the coast of southeastern North Carolina,
Wow.
and everyone was out there. The Weather Channel, CNN, like everybody was out there, and I was
Mhm.
there too, at the beach covering the hurricane,
Oh my gosh.
and it was 25 miles off the coast. So I've certainly done that, being out in the
Okay.
field covering tropical systems. But I've also been in situations where snow, for example, here in Chicago, I've been in the studio covering the actual snowstorm, or it was a blizzard, if I'm not mistaken. And we had reporters out just talking about what's happening, what they see,
Mm-hmm.
talking to people who are out and about too.
Wow. So basically, I mean, I think we knew this from like talking to our other reporter friends, but y'all don't really have like if there's like really bad inclement weather, like y'all are out there, like you're either out
We're
there or like
there.
in the studio, like you have
Yeah.
to like find a way to get there is pretty much what they're telling
Right.
y'all. Okay, that's
Honestly, I
intense.
like being out covering the
Okay,
storm. I do.
yeah,
It's the adrenaline rush, I guess. I don't know. I like being out covering the storm.
okay. We're gonna see you on Storm Chaser. I think your next career is probably gonna be Storm Chaser. That sounds, and that's on the Weather Channel. So maybe, like you said, it's gonna come full
Right?
circle. It'll be on the Weather Channel. Well, Iisha, thank you so much. This was really, really informative. I feel like our listeners, and it's just like something different. It's
Yeah.
something different that we haven't covered yet, and it's not a field that I think people like are just. It's like at the forefront of their minds about like, oh, I want to do this. But
Yeah.
hopefully, someone listening was really enlightened and just piqued their curiosity. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. If you want to, do you want to shout out like social media or if people can contact you? Is there a way they can reach out to just learn more?
Yeah, and I was actually going to say that because I want to help any and everybody who may have an interest in meteorology, specifically broadcast meteorology. If you just have questions or you want to,
Mhm.
go more in depth on anything that I just talked about, feel free to reach out to me on social at Iisha Scott, LinkedIn, Iisha Scott, or send me an email, aishascott2 at gmail.com, and I will get back to you. And again, I want to help anyone who's interested in the meteorology field or even just broadcast meteorology too.
Hmm. Thank you so much. I will put that in the show notes as well in case anybody wants to reach out, and we'll post it on social media. But yeah, thank you again. This was really awesome.
You're
I enjoyed
welcome.
myself.
This was fun.
But yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad you enjoyed it. But everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. I know for sure you learned a lot because I definitely learned a lot today. So thank you all for joining us. You know how to get in touch with us or how to follow. But if you don't, you can follow us on social media at Yasin Podcast. Please feel free if you have questions or if there's other careers that you want to hear about, please feel free to email us or reach out to us on, like I said, social media, Instagram and TikTok, or you can send us an email to let us know. But again, we're really appreciative of your support, all the shares, all the listeners, and we'll see you in the next one. See you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening to the latest episode of Your Advisors Will See You Now. Please make sure to follow us on all of our social media pages and check out our website. Take a look at the show notes below.
And please make sure to subscribe and share this podcast. Also, show us some love and please leave a 5-star review. Catch you next time.
See ya.